It was a truth universally acknowledged, at least amongst the matrons of Mayfair, that a young lady of 21 in possession of a substantial fortune must be in want of a husband. Lady Penelope Cavendish, however, was in want of no such thing. What she wanted, with an intensity that bordered on unseemly, was to be left alone with her book. Specifically, she wished to be left alone with her book in the hidden alcove of the Earl of Ashworth's library, a sanctuary she had discovered during her 3rd season and had commandeered as her own. The alcove was a marvel of architectural eccentricity, a small, circular nook lined with bookshelves, accessible only by pushing past a heavy velvet curtain that everyone else seemed to mistake for a solid wall. It was here she was ensconced on a particularly dreary Tuesday, the hero of her Gothic novel about to descend into a crypt, when the velvet curtain was thrust aside with a violence that sent a draught fluttering through the pages. "You," a deep voice growled. Penelope looked up, her eyes, the color of summer cornflowers, wide with feigned innocence. "Mr. Ashworth." "How?" "Unexpected." Nicholas Ashworth, heir to the earldom, and the most infuriatingly handsome man Penelope had ever had the misfortune of knowing, stood silhouetted against the dim light of the library. His cravat was artfully loose, his dark hair attractively disheveled, and his jaw was set in a line of pure, undiluted irritation. It was the same expression had worn every time their paths had crossed over the past 3 years, which was, she reflected with a secret thrill, quite often. "Is it?" he retorted, stepping into the alcove, forcing the space to shrink considerably. "This is my father's house. I might ask what you are doing, secreted away in a dark corner like a librarian?" she supplied sweetly, marking her page with a finger. "One who is enjoying a moment of peace before she is forced to re-enter the fray of Lady Jersey's musicale? A trial for which, I assure you, I require all the fortitude I can muster." He crossed his arms, the muscles in his forearms flexing beneath the fine linen of his shirt. It was a distracting display she was certain he employed on purpose. "You know very well that's not what I meant. You are always here. In this alcove. It is becoming a habit. It is a library, Mr. Ashworth. It is for reading. A concept you, a gentleman who boasts of never having finished a single novel, might find foreign." He took a step closer. The scent of sandalwood and fresh air clung to him. "I have finished several. Accounts of crop rotation do not count." That was agricultural philosophy, he corrected, his lips twitching. The irritation in his eyes was giving way to something else, something that sparked a familiar, dangerous heat in the pit of her stomach. "And you, Lady Penelope, are a menace. You hide in corners, you speak with a frankness that makes débutantes faint, and you refuse to dance with any eligible bachelor, thereby making my mother's matchmaking efforts on your behalf a personal crusade that I am forced to hear about at every meal." "I do not refuse to dance," she countered, her own temper beginning to simmer. "I merely refuse to dance with the ones who cannot form a sentence that doesn't involve the weather or the superiority of their own horseflesh." "And what, pray tell, would constitute a sentence worthy of the dance floor?" he challenged, leaning one broad shoulder against the bookshelf beside her. He was so close now she could see the faint flecks of gold in his hazel eyes. Penelope swallowed, her bravado flickering. She had 100 witty retorts, but they all died on her tongue. The truth was, she had been trying to stay away from Nicholas Ashworth for 3 years. She avoided the rooms he frequented, she filled her dance card before he could approach, she even affected an interest in watercolors, an art form she despised, to escape his presence at a house party in Kent. Yet, invariably, she would turn a corner and there he would be. She would seek solace in a quiet garden, and he would be striding through the gate. And now, her most secret sanctuary had been breached. The unavoidable truth was that she was drawn to him as surely as a ship to a lighthouse, a force of nature she could no more resist than she could the turning of the seasons. "A sentence," she said, her voice quieter than she intended, "that suggests a man sees the woman before him as more than a decorative bauble to be acquired and displayed." Something shifted in his expression. The teasing light vanished, replaced by an intensity that stole her breath. And if a man saw a woman with hair the color of autumn leaves, a sharp wit that could flay a man to the bone and leave him thanking her for it, and a stubborn independence that he found both maddening and intoxicating, his gaze dropped to her lips. What sentence would be worthy of her then? Penelope's heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. This was not the bickering they usually engaged in. This was a line, long-skirted, now being crossed with a deliberate stride. He might begin, she whispered, her hand, the one not holding her book, coming to rest on the solid wall of his chest without her conscious permission, by asking her to dance. Instead of lecturing her on her choice of reading nooks. His hand covered hers, his fingers warm and calloused. And if she were to refuse, citing his inability to form a proper sentence, then he would be a fool to give up at the first refusal. A smile, slow and devastating, curved his mouth. I am no fool, Lady Penelope. He bent his head. She rose on her toes. The kiss, when it came, was not the gentle, tentative thing of a debutante's dreams. It was a clash, a culmination. His lips were firm and demanding, tasting of tea and resolve. She met him with equal fervor, her free hand fisting in the fabric of his coat. The Gothic novel slipped from her grasp, landing on the floor with a soft thud that neither of them heard. He backed her against the bookshelf, the spines digging into her shoulders through her gown, and she welcomed the anchoring sensation. His hand slid from her cheek into her hair, loosening pins, freeing the cascade of auburn curls he had so aptly described. He kissed her as if he'd been waiting to do it for years, and Penelope realized with a dizzying clarity that he had. Just as she had. He tore his mouth from hers, his breathing ragged, his forehead resting against hers. I cannot stay away from you, he confessed, the words a rough whisper against her skin. I have tried. I have spent 3 seasons telling myself you are the most infuriating, provocative, utterly unsuitable woman in all of England. The feeling, she managed, her voice unsteady, is entirely mutual. I have a list. It includes your arrogance, your complete disregard for the conventions of polite conversation, and the way you fill a doorway as if you own it. I will own it someday, he murmured, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. And I would very much like you to be standing beside me when I do. She pulled back slightly, searching his face. The irritation, the amusement, the desire, it was all there, but beneath it lay a vulnerability she had never seen before. A fear of rejection that mirrored her own. That, she said softly, is a far better sentence than anything about horseflesh. A laugh, full of relief and joy, rumbled in his chest. He bent to retrieve her fallen novel, brushing the dust from its cover. Then you'll dance with me? At the musicale? In front of everyone? I will do you one better, Mr. Ashworth. She took the book from him, a giddy smile spreading across her face. I will stand up with you for the first set at the next Almack's. And the second. And the supper dance. And then, I shall allow you to escort me home, where you may lecture me on my reading habits to your heart's content. He groaned, pulling her close again. You are a menace. And you, Nicholas, she said, rising to press a soft, swift kiss to the corner of his mouth, are an unavoidable attraction. He kissed her again, soundly, and this time when the Gothic novel slipped from her fingers to the floor for a second time, neither of them made a move to retrieve it. The velvet curtain fell shut behind them, enclosing them in their own small world, a sanctuary they now, at last, were content to share. The matrons of Mayfair would be scandalized, of course. Lady Penelope Cavendish, the season's most elusive prize, had not only been caught but had apparently ensnared the heir to an earldom in a library alcove. It would be the talk of the ton for weeks. But as Nicholas Ashworth proceeded to spend the next quarter of an hour cataloguing, in exquisite detail and with the most improper use of his hands, all the things he found more interesting than crop rotation, Penelope decided that the opinions of the ton were, for the first time in her life, of very little consequence indeed. Some forces, after all, were simply unavoidable. And she had stopped wanting to avoid this one a very long time ago.